tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
I want to welcome into the show Kris Sims on this, our regular Monday fabulous contributor. She's fabulous any day, but on our show, she's fabulous on Mondays from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Kris, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Likewise, and thank you for holding down the fort on Mr. Stein's cruise. I hope it went really well.
It did. It was a lot of fun. I said we were in international water, so I was free of any of these so-called hate speech complaints. Not that this, I mean, this is an issue from a constitutional perspective, but one of the things that I would point out also is that they're bureaucratizing this process. The idea that we need all of these different roles and bureaucrats that are now adjudicating the online process. What could possibly go wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to balloon the size of government as if we don't have a big enough government already. And I hope Christine manages to log in here because she's absolutely brilliant on these issues. And of course, it was partially her team that had that big win at the federal court level very recently on the invocation of the Emergencies Act. So she really knows her stuff. We've known her for years. From the taxpayer's perspective, one of our key elements is accountable government. And I need to stress to folks here that you won't be.
I think you've gotten now a complaint against you from the government, Kris. Your camera just went off.
My goodness, we've been having some really funny technical issues here.
This is Bill C-63 in action. Once Kris Sims
man.
starts criticizing the government, the camera goes off. Well,
so
there we go. We got you back.
I'm not joking. I'm not touching anything. This makes no sense that this happens. Anyway, I'll try to will my camera to stay on. The point here is, and you described it brilliantly, Andrew, is with free expression, that is up to someone else's judgment, right? What you say or what I say may offend other people, it may not offend others, and may cause detestation in others, and may not cause detestation in others. The point here is that this is a freedom for exactly this reason. And you do not want, folks, you do not want the state deciding whether or not misinformation can be construed as hate speech, or whether or not, if I calmly explain to a young person that, you know what, the carbon tax, if we crank it up, is not going to stop the planet from ceasing to exist in 18 months. Like, here's maybe some other data. I'll walk you through some of the things that I've lived through and look back through a history book. Some folks who are really into this climate stuff might consider that to be hate speech. It may be attacking their identity. Like, this is the weird slippery slope that we could go down here. And we can't do this. We should not be growing the size of government, and we should not be impinging on people's free expression, because otherwise we won't be able to hold the government to account. And again, I try to explain this to everybody who might be thinking, oh, well, I don't mind if Justin Trudeau decides what is and is not hate speech and whether or not I'm allowed to express myself. Okay, if you're totally fine with Justin Trudeau deciding that, are you also fine with Pierre Poilievre deciding that for you? If the answer is no, we shouldn't be changing these laws.
Yeah, and that was, I don't know if you were on when I played that clip from Marie Ferrani, the justice minister, but when he was saying, oh, no, we can't trust big tech companies to adjudicate what you can say and see online. Government is the answer to that. I mean, I'm like, hang on, how about neither? Yeah. How about we delegate that authority to neither of them? Is that an option? Apparently not. And you are absolutely right about this, because it's very difficult in this day and age to do the principled stand that I'm doing and that you're doing here, and saying, no, I don't believe government should regulate hate speech online, because you're necessarily taking a stand in support of your ability to say things that I would firmly believe people shouldn't say. Sure. But the governor of that should not be the government. It should be civil society. It should be your own conscience. It should be the friend that says, hey, you should probably delete that tweet. And we've just completely abandoned that in society. And you're right. There are so many people that would love to put a bill like this in to stick it to conservatives. But the second you get some trigger-happy conservative government that wants to go after, let's say, anti-Israel speech. Now, this brings us to the Canadian, or the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, a group that has done tremendous work on anti-Semitism, and I think is a very important voice. They've come out in favor of this. And I understand why. I understand why they look at anti-Semitism as a problem and saying, we want to go after this. But that would be used, if they had their way, against a lot of speech that right now people on the left are quite fond of.
Exactly. And to your point that you made earlier, a lot of this stuff that you described off the top of the show is already illegal. Mm-hmm. It's already illegal in real life. It's already illegal on the internet. Now, I did find this interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they've shifted this now from culture over to justice, which is really interesting because the last 2 times they tried pushing this thing through, they tried doing it through the auspices of culture. So they're getting a little bit smarter because they're putting it through justice. I'll put it this way. I just want to take my Taxpayers Federation hat off slightly here, but it's still to accountable government. Okay, it's still about accountable government and smaller government. Anybody who's followed the Hill for the last 20 or 30 years or so has not just fallen off the turnip truck. Okay, we can see what they're doing here. They're repackaging things like protecting children. Who wouldn't want to do that? Protecting people from hideous images, as you know, the revenge P word, as you've said before. All of that is understood. All of that's already illegal. But then they're putting this little thing in there about hate speech, which is widely defined, really variable, and we've seen it play out before. They could easily separate this bill. Now, I'm not a lawyer. Hopefully, Christine will be able to explain some of that if she has time. But if they could split this bill, I'm guessing that this would be a lot easier to manage. Why link it to something that every decent person would want to outlaw anyway?
Yeah, I very agree. I mean, for starters, it overcomplicates the bill, and it also slows down what could be an easy slam dunk. I mean, the Conservatives, I think, would probably be on the front lines of pushing that forward and saying, let's just get that done in weeks. I also, just to put your taxpayer hat back on here, Kris, I wanted to ask about this Digital Safety Commission of Canada, because the bill creates this body. It creates this bureaucracy to manage online safety. Now, we can look around the world and see what the government is going after there. And one of them, I should have pulled the clip today that they've looked at when they were crafting this, was in Australia, which has a woman by the name of Julie Inman Grant, who is the e-safety commissioner of Australia, who I have run into on the streets of Davos, and who famously said at Davos that we need to recalibrate things like freedom of speech, because she believes they are anachronisms in the internet age. So it's pretty clear that the government is creating a bureaucracy that's going to just put censorship into this perpetual motion here. And bodies like that do not like to stay in their lane. Bodies like that are the ones that are going to come out in 3 years and say, it's not enough to go after hate speech. We need to go after misinformation as well.
Yes, exactly. When you grow government, that's like purposefully planting invasive species. It is. It will choke out the sunlight. It'll take up all the soil. It'll eat up all the oxygen, and it will put a chill on free expression and free speech. And they tried last time. I'm curious to see that they've kept this now in this new incarnation. I didn't see that they're going to keep the so-called censorship or free expression czar. So that position is still going to be there, and under that person, they're going to build an entire bureaucracy. Folks, we are more than $1 trillion in debt. We have unmoney. We cannot pay for one more person to be hired by the federal government. If you and I started counting to $1 trillion right now, it would take us 30,000 years. So in no way should the Trudeau government be expanding the size of the government, much less in order to make themselves less accountable to the people.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kris Sims. Always great to talk to you. We will see you next Monday.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.